Okay, February 5th, 2019, and this is part two. The Russian business that's heavy from the sky. Russian business that's heavy from the sky. Well, if we had a funny code name for somebody, I'm not saying this is his actual name, but I want to introduce to you Rubizhevsky. So you can think of him as Russian business that's heavy from the sky. You sell the part that goes on the head of the nuclear warhead, right, which is the highly enriched uranium exploder, if you will, the warhead, as it were. And then you have the missile, right? So it makes sense that the person and people involved in the uranium business are also going to be involved in the missile business. Same idea with the energetics and the explosives folks down at the different naval undersea warfare centers we've been at, the energetics business as they call it. They're going to be working together with the torpedo people. So the delivery mechanism and the warhead are going to go together. Same thing for long-range planes, going all the way back to the B-29, and then the secrets that go to Russia with the Tupolev 22, their long-range copy of the B-29. Again, that's the same Cambridge spy ring that's in our story. And the same thing for the delivery mechanism for the submarines with the nuclear missile, which is basically an aerial torpedo. That's the actual basis for the V-2 rocket. And then, of course, those two things come together with the Poseidon missiles that were submarine-based with the nuclear deterrent. So Rubiz, Russian business that's heavy from the sky, right? Well, you can think of that's megatons of megawatts because we take those Russian missiles, we dismantle them, we take out the highly enriched uranium warhead, and then we bring them here to the United States, supposedly to be downblended into low enriched uranium. The cylinders that those are shipped in, because it needs to be shipped as a gas, are the UF6 container cylinders, and they're made in a company called Worthington Cylinder in Columbus, Ohio. Interestingly enough, the same place that Lisa Page is during her undergraduate days at Ohio State University. Of course, I ran into a guy on my way to get to a place where those cylinders were supposed to be destined to for downblending the uranium, which was a centrifuge factory in Piketon, Ohio. But before I got there, folks from Columbus, Ohio and the FBI stopped me. A guy by the name of Pettyjohn, who also happens to be from Lynchburg, Virginia, where nuclear fuel rods for the nuclear Navy are made in Lynchburg, Virginia, with a company called BWXT. So a lot of our story comes together. Now let's continue this a little bit, this Russian business that's heavy from the sky, these nuclear missiles that are being dismantled at the end of the Cold War. And they're coming to Piketon, Ohio, in these UF6 cylinders that Worthington Cylinder makes. And we've got two go-betweens, two Russian go-betweens in our story, going from about 2004 all the way to 2015, maybe even 2016, but at least until the Iran nuclear deal is done. And you know one of them, one of the guys' name's Mikorin. Mikorin's the key guy that interfaces with Mark Lambert in our story. Again, Mark Lambert has the exclusive rights of shipping those UF6 containers, from getting them from Russia all the way to Ohio, all the way to Piketon, Ohio. That's transport logistics, right? They're coming in, those UF6 containers in the Port of Baltimore. It'd be nice to have some people over there watching the Port of Baltimore. And then they're coming in at Charleston, South Carolina before that. Okay, so Mark Lambert, transport logistics. The other guy who's actually going back and giving the money to the same people that make Club K. They would be doing Russian business that's heavy from the sky, because that's what Club K is. It is a torpedo inside a container, container vessel, or a shipping container is what it is. Same idea, right? Just now disguised. That money's going directly back to Club K. And that guy's name is Russian business heavy from the sky. Rubizhevsky is the other guy. And he's giving money. Now, people say, well, what proof do you have? Well, I'll show you. What proof do you have that happened? It's right over there. It's actually the Department of Justice in the District of DC, right over there in that rotunda building that you see there, 333 Constitution. They're the ones that said Rubizhevsky and Mikorin were sending money back to the Club K folks at Ross Braun Export. So we're not speculating here. Now, did they pick just a slice? Did they just pick a slice of the whole project starting in 2004 between Mikorin and Russian business that's heavy from the sky? Yeah, they just did that. Now guess how much time? Now this is like giving somebody the explosive lens, right? The implosion device for the fission atomic bomb, right? The people who did that were both burned up in the electric chair, right, with the Rosenbergs. Well, how many months or years do you think Russian business heavy from the sky got for this international espionage, for messing with the nuclear weapons that were a part of the Russian missile fleet and then getting them to Piketon, Ohio? 12 months and 1 day. 12 months and 1 day to make it 366. So anyway, the true story, and he just finished his sentence. I believe he served it right over there where Butina is. Now you say, okay, what's up with this Butina gag order? They've gagged Butina. They've gagged Butina's lawyer. They put Butina, she's right over there. She's right over there in that jail. And they've now issued a gag order. Do you think she was involved somehow with Russian weapons business? Going back and forth, sorry, I'm avoiding all the tourists here. Do you think she was involved with this Russian weapons business, this heavy from the sky, or maybe light on the ground was her part with the AK-47s, right? Why gag her lawyer? Why not let her lawyer speak freely on the courthouse steps about her innocence or guilt? Because maybe they don't want to say that they browbeat her in that place for almost 6 months and forced a confession out of her, and they said as long as she said she was a spy during the campaign for Russia and for Trump, as long as she agreed to their story, that she would go ahead, they would go ahead and give her a light sentence. Otherwise, they were going to give her the full 15 years. Is that right? Well, actually, I think that is the case. Otherwise, this is sort of like justice through a keyhole. It's just as bad as journalism through a keyhole. When you have a 14 or 15-year program where you're using Russians to send money back to Club K, right? Kick money back to Club K. You should be as open and honest about it. Tell people the full length and depth and breadth of the program. Say it wasn't just for the part at the nose cone of the Russian business that was heavy from the sky. It was also the missiles. It was Club K. It was a whole bunch of things that we did under the cover of that program. When we were sending diplomats back and forth for that program, going all the way back to 1998 when Bob Mueller leaves Wilmer Hale here and then becomes in 2001 the head of the FBI right down there. When he was sending that stuff and we were going back and forth with that diplomatic program, we were also doing weapons systems with the Russians, right? Otherwise they wouldn't have Club K. Otherwise Club K wouldn't be sold. And we wouldn't have done the Gulf Tanner deal in all of our ports with that same company, giving them exclusive access to the port of Wilmington for 50 years where Dow DuPont is. And again, down at where the key NASA location is in Cape Canaveral. The next place we need to look for Butina is in Gettysburg. Gettysburg. She goes to Eisenhower College in Gettysburg. Now, I know people may or may not remember that task force originally said that Butina was actually born in Maryland, very close to the Naval Academy. As a matter of fact, she was born at Severn Hospital, very close to that Severn Bridge. And a Navy couple adopted her and took her to Russia. Now, why would the CIA do that? Well, what if you wanted somebody to speak Russian really well without any accent whatsoever to come back here later on and do this pay-to-play? I think it's interesting that her undergraduate was done at Eisenhower College in Gettysburg, not far from Carlisle, where the Army War College is, not far from, our whistleblower Nate Kane at Raven Rock near Waynesboro, not far from Carlisle, etc. And she is then goes to American University and is recruited by none other than Susan Rice, who brings up a whole bunch of Russian students that are the most promising Russian students. These are the ones that you typically are being looked at to do graduate work and maybe even go on to be lawyers, like the Firestones, who are now the Navy lawyers in New York at the New York Russian retreat and at the Washington Russian retreat. But some make it and some don't. Some get used, some get stabbed in the back on their way up the ladder, up the spy ladder, if you will, and end up in jails and get justice through a keyhole. So, interesting speculation as far as Butina goes, but certainly the gag order on her lawyer is not speculation. The fact that she was selling AK-47s and selling them not to just low-level people, but she was meeting with very high-level people at the same time of the Iran deal in 2015 with the head of the Fed and the head of the US Treasury. So we can't discount her as just an AK-47 salesperson. She was helping the Russian Federation put in a very large deal into Iran and getting that deal done. And then, of course, her uncle, Torsion maybe, helping that money get laundered through the Russian Federal Bank. Now, it's interesting, if you look at Kalashnikov, and I've speculated that she's somehow related to Kalashnikov when he was on one of his jaunts here in America and fathering a child. We don't know that to be true, but it would be a way of gaining influence with Yeltsin when he was here in the country, especially if you were trying to carve up the old Soviet empire as it was collapsing. So that's speculation. But one thing that isn't speculation is that Mr. Kalashnikov's middle name is Timofeyevich, which is very close to Timofeev. We have a Timofeev in our story as one of the go-betweens between Russia and the weapons merchants in the Mediterranean, which is going to be Joseph Mifsud and George Papadopoulos. So if you want to explore that connection with Timofeyevich and Timofeev, we can do that, but just remember that they had a lot of meetings at a halfway point between the Greek Federation, between the Greek Federation and the country of Greece and Russia, which was located in Sochi, which is Putin's favorite spot, very close to the favorite spot of Boris Yeltsin, Krymsk. So, first part of this discussion about Russian weapons that are heavy from the sky, Rubashevsky and Timofeev, they had a 16-year deal for at least Russian highly enriched uranium going and not getting to Piketon, Ohio, and having stops along the way and losing UF6 out of those containers along the way. So we'll keep, again, only one reporter seems to bother actually going to these places and following up on these Uranium One stories or looking at the actual records. But again, I'm not the one saying Rubashevsky, and Mikarin are involved in a pay-to-play deal with the Club K company. They are the ones.